Well, when I first started out in this business, it was the trick was to figure out a way to do it well, and the amount of money that's being uh, at issue is, in the beginning it was $5 to $10 million. Now it's several hundred million per transaction. So anytime you have a situation where that much money is involved, just the roundings could be millions, and people fight very hard in order to protect their interests. What happens in the beginning, I think, is that they try to figure out a way to be smarter than you, and they try to outsmart you. Figure that there's something that maybe you don't know that they know, and they can trick you into agreeing to something that deprives you of your rightful gain from the transaction, whatever position you happen to be in at the time. And so in the beginning, in the early 80s, when I was doing this, that seemed to me to be what the game was. And so I tried to just be good at that game. And I found out that I had an aptitude for this, and that after you do a few dozen of these transactions, it's a little bit harder to trick you. But come to find out, you could actually trick them. And I got to the point where I just didn't want to play that game anymore. What I really wanted to do is to tell people what I really wanted, and I thought that everybody that was involved in the transaction had some right to receive either a job or compensation or a commission or a contract to build something or whatever it is that they were bargaining for. If they were at the table in the first place, they hadn't disqualified themselves in some other way, that they ought to be able to get what they bargained for. I went to my employer. I actually went to my lawyers first after having done many transactions with this same group of lawyers, and I told them that I didn't want to play this game anymore. I wanted to just tell them what I really thought I deserved out of this transaction, and I recognized what they ought to get out of it, and that I was going to actually help them to protect their interests. Well, the lawyers became very upset about this and said that they would not represent me. That I worked for a public company at that time, and that I needed to go to the board of directors and tell them what I was going to do and get their permission. And if I didn't do that, then they weren't actually going to help me do this, or even allow me to do it. So I did that. I went to the board, and I asked them. I told them what I wanted to do, and said I just wanted to play this completely straight, be honest on each of the points, and I wanted to put together fair documents that were fair for everybody. And they gave me permission to do it. And the first project that I did like that was in New Orleans. And this was in 1992. And so I said to them, here's the way we're going to do this. We already had sort of a letter of intent fleshed out. We're going to put together these documents. But here's the way it's going to go. I'm going to look out for you. And I want you to look out for me. Because I think you have a legitimate economic interest here. And there may be ways in which you could be deprived of those interests. But I'm not going to let that happen, because I think that you deserve what you bargained for. And therefore, I'm going to help you. And I hope before it's all over that you help me to protect my interests. And I'll go first. And we started going through the agreements, and I went to a provision fairly early on, and I said, this is what this says, and it looks great because you're going to be the developer and you're supposed to make this money. And but if you flip in the back, this section here in the back, it looks like actually without doing something really bad, you could be deprived of that. And so what I'd like my lawyer to do, and I looked over at my lawyer, and I said, I would like that provision to be changed so that this unfair thing could not happen to them. And my lawyer was a little uncomfortable, but he didn't want to say anything. And he said, okay, fine, let's do that. And the guys at the other side of the table, they didn't really know what to make of this. But they said, great, thank you. And we moved on. And about a half hour later, we came across another one, and they were ready to turn the page. And I says, before we turn the page, if you look here in the middle, this provision here, that ties over to this other agreement over here, and which has a mere provision. But actually, if you don't do this exactly right, exactly perfectly, you won't get this other compensation that would come to you under certain circumstances. And I don't think that that's fair, because you would trigger this just too easily. It's not right. And I want to change it so that it is fair. Well, that started to really get to him. And as we went on over the period of the next several days going through these agreements, I kept doing that whenever I could. And when things would come up that really hadn't been resolved, we debated them, and I would say, well, this is what would be fair for me. Now, what would be fair for you? And as we kind of articulated it, I took their position and also my own. And we just kind of looked at it from a 360-degree view and what would be the right thing for all of us in this situation. Well, it blew them away. We were able to conclude the transaction, and everybody felt great about it. We built the hotel, and for $25 million, they brought it in on time and on budget, which was great. 2 years later, we sold it for $45 million. We made a $20 million profit, and they got half. And that transaction saved them financially. They also told me later that it changed the way that they did business. One of the two of them, I thought, really kind of got it as we were going through it, and one of them I didn't think did. Well, some years later, we decided to do another project together, same two guys. And one of the fellows there, the one that I thought probably didn't get what I was doing, he was being honored that day as being Orlean of the Year. And finally, it was his turn to say thank you or whatever. And he stood up to the microphone that was in front of him, and he turned to the audience, the people who were there, and he pointed to me, and he said, "Jack, would you please come and sit next to me?" And he looked at the people, and he said, "Thank you very much for all your kind words." He said, "But I am not the one that you should be honoring here today. You should be honoring this man sitting next to me." And he pointed to me. He thanked me. He thanked me. They were saying, "It's you, sir," him. And when it's his turn to talk, he said, "It's not me, it's him." And he referenced specifically the things that I had done and the way it had affected him. Sometimes people don't get what you're doing right away. But it's not always about right now. Sometimes it takes people a while to get it. What you do is you have your own ethics, your own moral compass, and you just stay with that. People kind of get it, and they will generally reflect back to you what you are showing to them.
Was there something that happened in your life where you decided you didn't want to do it the normal way and you wanted to do it this other way? What caused this to happen?
Well, when I was a teenager, I thought that I would go into the ministry, become a pastor of a church. That was kind of my path. And then my father died when I was a teenager. And that sort of changed things. I thought I had to make money, which I did, to support myself and my family, my mother and my sister. And I put myself through school by working. And all of those ethics and morals were still there. They're still ingrained within me. And as I began to develop in my career, I found myself not always following those morals and ethics. And it bothered me. It always bothered me. It got to the point where I just didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to bring what we were talking about and listening to on Sunday morning, I wanted to bring to Monday morning and Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning. I wanted to live more of my life in that ethical structure, that spiritual understanding. And the interesting thing is that there is no penalty that you pay. It's better. You do better. You actually make more money. Your business booms. I mean, I don't know why everybody doesn't do this. What happened? It's human nature to be maybe a little bit manipulative and trying to outsmart the other guy. Your ego gets involved and you don't want to look like an idiot and all this kind of stuff. As soon as you stop doing that and you just go out and do the right thing, it works.